Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Slay to Success Talk Show. My name is Rochelle Slay, or Slay Queen Hemingway, CEO and founder of Slay to Success. So, as you come in on the show, please let us know where you're streaming in from. Give us your name because we want to give you a shout out. You decided that you want to be here with us to have this SLAYMAZING conversation that we're going to have. And y'all, I have a guest that you want to stay tuned for, okay, and all the way to the end. I am super excited that we were able to meet and that she is willing to share her story to inspire others into action. So what we're really doing here is we're slaying all the things, okay? Slay means to kill it, to dominate it, and to nail it, to be on point, to impress greatly, and to dream big and work hard until you own it. It is also an acronym that stands for a framework that we can use to become more visible, confident, more influential for the opportunities that we are desiring, deserve, and we absolutely earn. Because I know I am accomplished woman, you're an accomplished woman as well. And so there is more for us to do. So the framework stands for strategic identity, leadership presence, aesthetics authority, and your narrative power. And in these 4 phases, we build and create a brand that is not only unstoppable, but is memorable for those opportunities that you're looking to get into. So at the core of this show, y'all, this show is really to bring in like-minded men and women, but mostly I have women that come here on the show. And it's to inspire, educate, and empower you by sharing some actionable strategies for personal branding, leadership presence, and personal and professional growth. The show is connecting real life experiences. None of this stuff is made up. All right. These are real people with real stories, with real tools that they are giving us, helping us to transform our identity, our influence, and visibility so we can achieve the success we're capable of. So we're going to be turning potential into presence and presence into opportunity. All right, so tonight I have Samantha Norment. All right, she is a United States Army Iraq War veteran. Okay, she is a certified prayer specialist, a women veterans advocate. She's the founder and CEO of Her Hope Foundation Incorporation and the author of the upcoming memoir called Wounds That Don't Give Medals For. Through her powerful journey from military sexual trauma, combat, domestic violence, addiction, homelessness, and recovery, Samantha has transformed pain into purpose. Today, she is dedicated to closing the gaps in services for women veterans while empowering others to find hope beyond their struggles. Her message is one of resilience, healing, and courage, reminding audiences that our greatest wounds are often the wounds that no one can see. Samantha inspires people to reclaim their voice, embrace their story, and discover that healing is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new purpose. Please, y'all, put your hands together. Welcome her to the stage. Hey, Samantha, how you doing?
I am well, Rochelle. Thank you so much for having me on here today.
Oh my goodness. I had no other choice. You were an obvious choice. Okay. Y'all, okay, so all my LinkedIn family, hey, how y'all doing? Okay, because that's how me and Samantha met. And she reached out and said, hey, I would love to be a guest on the show. And looking at the profile, I said, yes, Queen. Yes, we need to have you here on the show today. So if you will, can you please give our audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started into our conversation.
Sure. Again, thank you for having me on your show. So first and foremost, I'm Samantha Norment. I'm a U.S. Army Iraq War veteran. I'm a mother, first and foremost. I'm a certified peer specialist. I work, again, I'm women veterans advocate. I founded Her Hope Foundation in 2023. And then also the author of Wounds They Don't Give Medals For, set to be released in September 2026. My story starts way before I even put on the uniform, long before I became a veteran, a founder, or author. I was a little girl searching for acceptance and trying to understand where I belonged. Like many young women, I wanted community, identity, and a place where I felt seen.
Mm,
In the Army, I believed I had found those things. I found structure, I found purpose, I found a uniform that told the world who I was. But when military service also exposed me to experiences I was not emotionally prepared to understand, I learned how to complete the mission, remain strong, continue moving forward. What I didn't learn was a process everything that I carried after the mission
mm,
was over.
yeah. So if I can, let's like walk back a little bit
Sure.
about, you said you were looking for community, you were looking for identity. So how did you get into the Army? I guess let's just start there because I think every one of us who has served, there is a story to that.
Hmm.
So how did you decide, hey, I want to just go in the Army?
So that's a quite a story.
Okay, I'm
I
listening.
um I was originally supposed to enlist right after high school. However, um, my reality didn't look that way. I ended up actually dropping out of high school, and I did get my GED, and I was able to return back to my mother's house, or my parents' house, excuse me, and was given a deadline to be out the house. Um,
Mm,
and so 19 days after September 11th happened, although that was my original plan when I was in high school, was to join the military. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of my father. Um, but 19 days after September 11th happened, I was extremely desperate. And I went into the recruiter's office and asking not which one's going to give me the best, job training or anything like that, which one's going to pay me the most. And they told me the Army. And so I felt like that was my escape. I felt like that was my opportunity to really make a name for myself. And so that's
mm,
what led me to join the Army.
yeah,
Again, originally that was my plan after high school. However, my cards and the lifestyle did not play out that way.
yeah,
Um, so, mhm.
yeah. And I think that is true for a lot of us that have joined the military. We're searching for something. We
Right,
don't know. We're either running away from something
right.
or we're running to something, because it's an option. And like you, I was in college and I wasn't doing well. My parents were like, well, you're gonna have to figure out what you're gonna do. Your time is up pretty much here. And I'm
Right.
like, really? Oh, okay. So, the beauty is that you were eligible, okay, to go into the Army. And so you went into the Army, and what was your job? What was kind of like the training? Where did you go? Kind of give us a little bit about that.
So I was always fascinated with the medical field. However, that's not what I qualified for.
Mm,
I had just enough credits that allowed me to come in as a high school graduate.
yeah.
And so the job that I qualified for and enlisted as was a chemical operations specialist. So I
Mm,
did basic training AIT at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
yep.
Um, and then I came home, and then was shipped out to Germany. So I was stationed in Germany um, in
Mm,
2002 is when I was boots on the ground in Germany. So that was my unit. I was one of 16 females out of 242 soldiers, and that definitely brought it made me feel small again. I'd
mm,
experienced shrinkage, if you will, in my upbringing from early childhood, going through foster care, and being adopted. And I felt like being in this unit, especially wearing that uniform, that it was almost like this armor that I now had. That the rest of the world was unable to touch me and unable to harm me any further.
mhm.
And I joined the military, or I'm sorry, I got to my unit, and that was not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
I fell into alcoholism early
Mhm.
on. That
Yep.
was my real first taste at freedom. And, everyone back home was applauding me for where I was and what I had done despite my hardships or downfalls, I should say, prior to my enlistment. But I was falling apart, and I had underlying trauma that hadn't surfaced yet. And so I fell into alcoholism in the military. I had numerous counseling statements. I had every Article 15, every level of Article 15. I While I was in my unit is when I was assaulted by one of the NCOs that was in my unit. And I was too ashamed and too embarrassed to speak up. One of the things that I learned at a young age was I didn't really hold a voice, or people wouldn't believe me. So I kept to myself. I was already deemed, or I felt that I was deemed as a bad soldier. And then Operation Iraqi Freedom started in 2003. And that gave me a new sense of being able to create a new name for myself. And so I looked forward to that. I deployed with my forward support battalion unit. While downrange, I was attached to an infantry battalion where I was assigned as a female searcher. No real MOS, no real training. I was boots on the ground with an infantry battalion and participating in pretty much every activity that they did. If it was a raid, if it was a house search, if it was a street sweep, if it was whatever the situation called for that they needed a female. I was one of 5 females within my battalion that was attached to the infantry battalion. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So that's what led me, or that's pretty much my story of active duty. I mean, I can go further into discharge, but I could definitely talk about that in a minute. But being a part of the infantry battalion, or just being in the military itself, I lost a lot of my femininity. And it was, again, my identity has been something I was searching for, or an identity, I should say, since a young child. And in the military, it's easy to be built up to be this image of greatness and heroism. And then coming home, it's, what do I do with that? Right. And so I struggled with that. I came home a single mom, and it was another strip of identity. And it just seemed like it was just compiling from early childhood and just trying to find my space and find where I belong. And I felt like I was failing in so many ways at different turns in life.
Yeah. I definitely can relate, and I know others can relate to that who have served. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your service and sacrifices, because it was a lot, and acknowledging that it took a lot of courage and a lot of resiliency to do what we were called to do.
Right.
And you're sharing that you didn't quite get the job that you were looking for, and consequently you were sexually traumatized, if you will, sexually assaulted, and because it's a male dominated environment. And I know exactly what you're speaking to when you don't necessarily belong.
Right.
They tolerated us, all right, because it was not a lot of us. And so you're trying to find community and identity
Right.
with the institution or system that doesn't really give you fair equity, or the sense that your work, your performance is equal of a male counterpart. So you're always having to prove yourself. It's just like this over and over and over again, like, I can do that. So I was just imagining you during the war, kicking down doors, going and doing searches and all these things without real training, but wanting to feel a sense of belonging in that space. That's dangerous work, Queen. That's dangerous, and a lot of times we don't see ourselves while we're in it. But it's when we come back and we step out of it that we realize that, we were doing things that most people would never, ever dream of doing.
Right.
They would say, absolutely not. That's not for me. And I can understand also the femininity part. And I was just, interesting enough, I was at an event last night and we were talking about feminine versus masculinity energy, kind of like tossing with that. And there was an older woman, and she's very wise. And she said, you know what? Sometimes we have to just come to terms. We are who we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are the sum of our experiences.
Right.
We are the sum of it. So if at a younger age we were exposed into environments where we did not feel safe, where we didn't feel like we had a voice, and we had to go in protection mode, some of that continues to go on, even, and you get into another environment where you have to do it again,
Right.
and then you leave from there, and that's what right? So it is something that we have in our mind. We're like, okay, what who am I? Like, who am I really? And then you're saying that so you were discharged from the army.
So um, I, while in Iraq, after I returned to my unit, I was in Iraq from April 2003 to October of 2003. I had returned to my
Mm,
unit and had gotten pregnant,
mm,
and that led to my third Article 15. The circumstances behind me getting pregnant, and so I was unable to make it to specialist, right? Because you
yeah.
have to be. I had already been knocked down. I believe I was a private or PV2 by that time, and there was no obvious way that I was going to make it to specialist. Having my daughter in 2004, I was sent back to my home station in Germany, and the odd thing about that is I stood in the audience. I'll never forget standing in the audience and welcoming the rest of my unit back. Um, and then receiving a company grade Article 15, which led me to have to discharge. I received an honorable discharge. I kind of felt like they were gracing me with that honorable discharge,
Mm,
so that
mhm.
I say less, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, and I, again, came home and was left with this experience. And just like you were saying, when everything is moving around us, we don't have that time to sit there and really think about what was I engaging in. Was it morally, did it match with my morals and my ethics? And coming home, I was sitting with this. I was feeling shame. Everyone
Mhm.
saw um, who I was when I was in the military, but I didn't have that same hurrah. I didn't have a welcome home ceremony when I got back. I was expected, and I think I also placed that expectation on myself that I was supposed to be at some superior level in life because I had served in the military, and that was not my reality. And so I was grasping for straws, and there was a lot of identity loss. There was a lot of isolation. There was a lot of fragmented pieces that I tried to latch back onto. And then, 6 months being home, I felt I couldn't make it here, right? I couldn't make it in the civilian world. I don't know what my next steps are. I'm not looking like, the heroes that they show in the movies. And so how I was comparing myself, I felt like I was just not measuring up to this expectation that I believed my family and family and friends had on me. And so I volunteered to go back. And as you know, being a single mom at that time, I was not able to go back in on active duty. So I want to say I settled, and this is not, disgracing or discounting, reserves, but that's what was offered to me. And so I grasped at the first thing that the military allowed me to reclaim part of that identity. And so I joined the reserves, changed my MOS to information systems operator. I really took that position or that training because it made me feel like I was intelligent. Um, and then I didn't have the same standards. I didn't have the same accountability. I I fell into what was familiar around me, the loneliness, the isolation, and I fell into substance use. I didn't have anyone holding me accountable. I didn't have anyone really checking in, and it's not on anyone else. But I also didn't know the parameters of the framework. I didn't even identify as being a veteran. So for
Mm,
so long, I was suffering in silence. To be honest, I thought to be a veteran, especially based on movies, you have to be a 65-year-old white man to qualify to be a
yeah.
veteran, was my understanding.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tap into resources. I didn't know that I qualified for anything. Even going to look for a job, I served I served our country. And this is not saying anything about, customer service work, but I held myself, or I was trying to hold myself and hold on to that little bit of dignity that I once had, and being in
Mm.
the military, and thought that I was superior to any other jobs that I once held before I even left for the military.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to walk into any doctor's office. I didn't want to talk to my family. I tried a couple of times, and the acronyms that we have in the military creates kind of like, it's a new language. So it creates kind of a language barrier when I'm trying to
Yep.
interact with family members and they're not understanding the acronyms. And so again, it's another opportunity to feel isolated. So I distanced myself. The language I did learn was substance abuse. That's what people in my
Mm.
community were doing. That's what people
Yep.
near me were doing. And so that
Yep.
became the language that I could connect with.
Yep.
It helped me numb my pain. It helped me stay awake and keep from having nightmares. And it allowed me to I still showed up functionally. No one was really asking questions. So I almost felt like I was invisible, if you will, in a way.
Mm. Oh my goodness, Samantha. You know, these are the things that are so important, and I'm so grateful that you're open and at the point where you're sharing your story, because I know, especially when you get discharged from the Army or Air Force, military, whatever branch you're in,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not where you wanted to stop. It wasn't on
Right,
your terms, right? It's on their terms.
right.
And now you got to pick up your life and you got to figure out what to do next. And then on top of that, you have a child,
Yes,
so it's not like an easy flow or an easy transition. You have to find, childcare, you're finding the job, you're finding a new community. Um, and I'll tell you, it's the same. I think it doesn't matter if you serve for 2 years, 3 years, or if you serve for 30 years. There's a language barrier. No one gets it. If no one around you has, served in the military or affiliated with the military, they look at you with 10 heads. Like, what are you
right,
talking about? Right.
right,
And so no one tells us and translates that and says, hey, you need to think about how you're going to reintroduce yourself. Like, how are you going to make new friends? How are you going to, find a way to live? I mean, it's almost like, thank you for your service, right?
mm-hmm.
And, see you later, And so a lot of people succumb to alcoholism or substance abuse, things to numb the pain. Not only that, the PTSD, I think, and all of us who have served in a combat zone
Right,
has had, some form, a level of PTSD. And so you're trying to cope with
right,
those things, and no one really addresses it before you leave. And again, the resources there, again, I served for a very long time, and resources were not, like, people weren't calling, people weren't saying, hey,
right,
here's a directory, there was none of that. It was like, no, figure out how you're going to get medical care. All right, figure out, where the schools are at. It was just it was leading yourself in the wilderness. Okay. And so, I think that a lot of people who can relate and resonate with that story, may still be struggling with it. They really
right,
haven't found their footing, you
right,
know? And you're right, the picture, the image of the military member who has retired and is a veteran
right,
is a white male, and it's usually an older white male.
right.
And it's something that we have had to think about and do a lot of reflection on. So I'm so happy that you shared that with us. And y'all, there was a little glitch into, it was like dropping or whatever. I'm like, what's the weather out here doing? It's been raining and all kinds of stuff up here. I'm like, Lord. So I'm glad
It's
I came
similar to
back.
that here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, ooh. All right. So, you transitioned, if you will, from the Army, and
Mhm.
then um, right away you went to Georgia, or was there somewhere in between?
So I'm originally from California. So when I discharged from the military, I went back to my parents' house, my home of record, and you know, in Southern California. When I came home, it was welcoming, originally from family members. They didn't know the backstory. They didn't know about the Article 15s, nor would they have understood, in my opinion. And so I came back to California. It was in 2006 is when I reclassed, which brought me to Fort Gordon, Georgia. So I reclassed from chemical operations to information systems operator. And I came to Georgia, and I knew then it was something about the Southern accent that I knew I was coming back.
Ooh.
So, no, I relocated here in Georgia with my 3 daughters in August of 2022.
So tell us a little bit about that, because it seems like your discharge from the Army wasn't favorable. And then you go to California and you're living with your parents. And at that time, you had 1 or 2 children?
At that time, I had one. I had one daughter. She was 4 months old when we left Germany. She was born in Germany, and I was discharged with prior to discharge. I received a company grade Article 15, and came home, but no one knew my secret. Right? They knew that I came home a single mom. They knew about my deployment to Iraq, but they didn't know the story behind why I was home after only 3 years of active duty. So they didn't ask, I wasn't telling. I was afraid that they would shame me. And so I came home, single mom, again, based on the circumstances. I don't mind being transparent. I received a company grade Article 15. I was never married a day in my life, but I was charged with adultery. And the dad was not. Was charged with
well, of course not.
I was forced to ETS. He received a reduction in rank, and then was promoted later, I believe, and then received a Department of Defense job afterwards, or a contract.
Oh yeah, yeah, standard.
So, but yes, I came home and came back to my parents' house, and as long as I stayed under the radar, it didn't stir up the same commotion that I did before I left. No one really questioned me much.
Is it because they weren't interested, or maybe they were seeing you as what they saw you prior to going into the Army?
It's possible.
Because I mean, sometimes people, like we have children, and it's hard for me to look at our son, and he's 16. I still look at him as a baby, okay? Because, that's just what he is. But he has to remind me all the time, I'm not a baby. I'm almost ready to drive a car. I'm like, yeah, okay, And so sometimes I think like ignorance is bliss. It's not like they weren't, saying that they don't love or want you or anything like that. I think it's just like, hey, this is just who she is, So will she just carry on her business and doing what she does, and really not asking hard questions, really not asking how was it, or why are you back early? I mean, I think with people,
I think that could be true. I also think that with that there's, my mom didn't really have much understanding of the military. Yeah. And so I think that there was also a lack of understanding. And that became one of the barriers also that kind of led me to shut down, is my willingness in the beginning to share about my experience. And this is in no way, shaming my mom and her lack of knowledge of what the military lifestyle was. My go-to was my dad, right? Yeah. So again, another male. I was only female in my family that joined the military, and so my lack of connection was limited.
Ooh, okay, Queen. You talking my language. This is it right here, because my dad was the only military member, if you will. And when we came home, well, at first when I was coming home by myself, we would have our own, get-togethers, if you will, and bonding. And it was almost like we had our secret
Right.
outing or secret meetings, because no one really understood what we were talking about. And then when I got married, then my husband, he became more of my
Mm.
dad's companion, because it was something that they could really bond on from
Right.
a male perspective. And then my one of my uncles, my dad's brother, after my dad passed away, he was calling me,
Mm.
and he was in the Air Force for a few years too. And my mom kept saying, "Why is he calling you like that? Why does he
Mm.
reach out to you like that?" And you saying that just in this moment is now like an aha moment for me. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I see. So it really does. And I'm the only one that went into the military, the only female at the time. I have a cousin who actually served for 8 years. Um, but it was, well after me, and she served for 8 years. And so she and I never really connected like I thought we would. Because you get so comfortable being uncomfortable with
Yeah.
men.
Right.
It's like it's such an oxymoron.
Right.
It's such an oxymoron.
Right.
So, and so your dad, so you came home and you were able to connect with your dad.
Yes. Yes.
And so he was able to kind of help you, or did you think that it was just like, same old kind of traditional, veteran bonding?
So that was, I think, when I came home, and my dad, I was adopted at a young age, at 6 years
Yeah.
old. So
Yeah.
my dad, I knew that he served in the military, but I never knew really his backstory. And even
Yeah.
joining the military was something, I want to, I want to be closer to him, right? And so I was really seeking for approval and
Mm.
pride.
Mhm.
And when I came home, my dad was my go-to, my sanity blankets, my um, grounding space. And my dad passed away in 2010, and it felt like all of that shattered. It was my last little bit of, um, not my gravity, but it was my last little bit of safety, if you will,
Yeah.
was taken from me.
Yeah.
Um, I'll never forget that. And it shifted something in me. And I think it's definitely affected how I've moved forward. There was some gaps. I was the only veteran that I was, connected with or speaking to, who he was Army also. And so
Yeah.
I feel like it was almost like that silent bond that we had,
Mhm.
again, like you mentioned, that language that others didn't understand. And so it was, again, similar to like that secret. I
Mhm.
would go to him for advice. And even when I started to question my mental health, which I didn't even know it was an issue with mental health, I remember asking him, do you think I should speak to someone? And his
Mm.
response, I'll never forget, is, if it starts affecting your life.
Mm.
I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Wow. You know, it is definitely hard. Transition is hard.
Yep.
The struggles are hard. Anyone who tries to minimize or downplay it, I always question why they're doing that, because nobody gives you a handbook and tells you how to, transition out of the military and do it well. So you live in there in California for a few years, and then you actually have another daughter, right? And so you were with your family the whole time, because I know there was a stint where you were actually homeless.
Yes.
So how did that come to be?
So this is where we get to the heavy stuff. So,
Okay.
um, uh, so 2010, my father passed away. 2012 was, I was already in my addiction. 2012 was when my mother decided to sell her home, and that was, again, another shift in the foundation. I was being functional. I didn't really have any responsibilities. I showed up how I was, right? I was receiving, I think I was at school at the time. So I looked like I was still, having money, if you will. So I was buying a lot of my friendships in my addiction. And 2012, my mom sold the house that we grew up in after we were adopted. And that was the first time that as an adult, I was forced to really be responsible. Um, my parents were my go-to when it came to childcare. I was not naturally a loving, caring mom. That was something that was a challenge for me to be affectionate.
Yeah.
It was very uncomfortable. And when we moved out, when I say we, I mean myself and my adult sisters moved out. I rented an apartment, fell into bad relationships, and got even heavier in my addiction. But I was still functioning because people weren't asking that many questions. I was still doing the bare minimum to keep the lights on and things like that until I wasn't. In 2016 was the first time that wow, 2016 was the first time that I was expected to go into treatment. I had my third daughter by that time, and I did not know how to manage a household. I was not being responsible. I also had received my service connection back pay and had no idea how to really pay bills, and I'm not blaming anything but my choices and not asking how. But I didn't know how to be financially responsible to go from, cash aid and food stamps to now 4 years of back pay, a service connection with no financial literacy or understanding. I blew it, and we were homeless. That was my first time coming into a treatment program. Before that, I was used to just running away. When something was challenging, I would just run away or move to another place and then start all over and hope that my past didn't catch up to me. But there was nowhere for me to go. I found a program that was I want to say it was Adelanto, California. I had reached out to the VA. By that time, I came to the VA when I felt like coming to the VA, or just really wanted someone to talk to or needed medication or was trying to get out of something by, saying someone did whatever. And that's why I had a positive urinalysis. I was making all the excuses. And I think that was the first time I admitted that I had a substance use problem. And they sent police officers to my house to do a health and welfare on my children. And that came with Child Protective Services. And I had no choice but to go into a program. And I went into the 9-day program thinking I had all the answers. I wanted to be smarter than everybody else. And then my mom passed away. That was 2016. And that was April 2016. It was May of 2016 that she got really sick. And then I want to say it was June of 2016. And I struggled with that also coming into recovery, not knowing the exact date. And so that was another area of shame that I held on to, and embarrassment. And 2017 was able to get back on my feet a little bit, but then I fell back into my addiction, got back with my abusive kid's dad, and was evicted from the apartment that I was on with HUD Vash. And I had nowhere to go. I, again, burned my bridges, and I didn't want to die, but I was so fed up with living the life that I was living. And I looked up an organization. I thought to myself, I'm going to give it one more try. And I Googled a organization that would allow me to bring my daughters as I go into recovery, because if not, I had to voluntarily put them in foster care while I got myself together, which is also my story from early on childhood, right? So repeating that. And then I was able to bring my daughters with me. I was given an opportunity to move away from everything that I knew, and it saved my life. I was in a transitional housing, with my 3 daughters. Didn't know how to mom. Everything that they did irritated my withdrawal, if you will, my coming down from being high all the time. And I had to literally be present, and it was uncomfortable, and it was scary, and it was embarrassing, and there was so many shameful moments, and I was for so long making excuses of the circumstances in my daughter's birth. And that was the first time that I was in an environment to be open and honest, because the other ones that were in the program with me were women veterans that were in recovery as well. And that just changed my
Mm.
whole perspective on what healing can look like. For
Yeah.
so long, I felt like I was on this island by myself, and that I'm the only one that didn't succeed in the military, that came home because I was so isolated. But that program saved my life and gave me an opportunity to build what and who I am today.
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it's not easy, especially knowing that both your mother and your father passed away. Um, so my condolences and sympathies for that as well, Queen. Um, but you know, getting up, falling back, getting back up again, falling back, and then you're like, let me just try one more time. Let me just try one more time. And thank God you were with other women veterans who were going through similar things like you
Right.
were. And you were able to take your kids because, you saying it's pattern, it's like, hey, I had already been part of that system before as a young child. Didn't
Right.
want your children to be succumb to that, and have that part of their journey and their experience. Um, and then being able to now be able to come share a story. I feel like, too many times because of the guilt and the shame, we hold
Mm-hmm.
on to these
Right.
types of stories. And I encourage, so many women who have, things that they've been through, especially in military service that they have not shared, when you get to a point of healing, because I think that is truly the space, right? When you can get to a point of healing where you can share, it helps others who may be experiencing what you experience right now, you
Or know
know,
someone, right?
or know someone. Yeah. I mean, this is just, it's very powerful. All right. For you to be here on the show and to share this with us. And so we did have one guest, and I think she's on YouTube. And she said it gets me every time too. And I think she was talking about the glitch and stuff, for when it dropped a little bit. But Life with Lacey D, thank you so much for being here with us, Queen. We appreciate you. So you were able to go through the program,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously were successful in going through that. And then you were able to purchase a home.
Yes.
So, tell us about that.
I wow. Yes, I went through the program. Was able to graduate from the program. Lived in an apartment in Fresno, California, with my 3 daughters. Um, and in 2022, my oldest daughter had graduated high school that June, and I I knew I had a brother that lived in Georgia, and I had been, connected with him for quite some time. And I flew out here. I want to say it was in July of 2022, and I felt so powerful being able to connect with a realtor, because at one point this was a dream that I had, and
Yeah.
I never thought that was possible, especially with my background, the downfalls, the hurdles. But it came out here, connected with a female realtor
Yeah.
who took me around and showed me different houses. And so for it to be my choice, right, I had a
Mm,
say, and I
mm,
picked the place that I felt was adequate. Well, not just adequate, but I really wanted it to reflect my overcoming and have a space for my daughters. So, in California, I would not have been able to acquire the size of property. And that's not me boasting, just saying I wanted to, that was important for me. I wanted to have a space where my girls can run around in the backyard and have a trampoline and, X, Y, and Z. And we have that. And another thing is having each of my girls to have their own bedroom. That was extremely
mm.
important to me. And so
Yeah.
we accomplished that. We moved here. I got a job at the place that I'm working at now, at the hospital that I work at now, as a certified peer specialist. Um, Yes, thank you. I was already working as a certified peer in 2020 to 2022, and then relocated here, got connected with the opportunity, and we've been here ever since. This August will be 4 years that we've been here in Georgia.
Wow. Oh my goodness. You're
Yeah.
making my heart sing. I mean, seriously, this is really so good. It's a good news story, Queen. I'm just like, yes, and so, being there in Georgia, having a house where your girls are thriving, you're thriving, and the journey
Yes.
of you getting there. And I think this is, what part of the book, so tell me how then, I mean, you buy a home and now you got a great job and now you're an author, right? So,
Mm-hmm. And founder.
of
Yes.
Hope Foundation.
Her Hope Foundation. Yes,
Yeah. So
ma'am.
tell us about like that, because I know there's a lot of women who are wanting to be, a founder of some organization that, can provide some meaningful impact and purpose. And it's usually from the pain
Yes.
that we have had. And then also they want to become authors, they want to become speakers, they want to be able to share their story. So how did you end up writing the story, or when did you decide to do that?
So, Wounds They Don't Give Medals For is the book, is the title of the book. It'll be released in September of 2026. I had been, I share so much of my story already as a peer specialist. That's one of the, part of the description of the role is to connect and provide hope to others. And one of my passions as well is, identifying resources and connecting women veteran with resources that many of us don't know exist. And
Yeah.
so when I began wanting to just journal, it really became this journaling, like audio journaling,
Yeah.
and putting my experiences on record,
Mm.
and hearing, especially in my day-to-day just job, daily, I speak to other women and I hear so many gaps in just the services. Many of them have been in Georgia way longer than I have been. But it stems back to even when I was in California, right? When I was in my own program or in my own recovery program, even working as a peer specialist in California and connecting with women. And a lot of times we hear all the great things that are being done for male veterans, but we
Mm.
barely hear about the stories of women veterans.
Yeah.
There's so many movies that are out there. There's so many get-togethers. When you do come to a veteran get-together, predominantly it's the male veterans that are speaking, right?
Mm.
So it's very rare that we hear a woman's side of or woman's experience in the military.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to put my story, because as I began my healing journey, my story matters as well.
Yeah.
I encourage women veterans to share their story.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what led to Wounds They Don't Give Medals For, is because so many times, and in so many of the stories that I've heard as I walked along the side of other women, is how similar or how, I'm sorry, my daughter just came in here and distracted me.
Oh, no worries.
Is how much our stories intersect in so many different ways. And so if a lot of, so many women that I've shared with, I'm going to say, that are still in their crisis, for instance,
Mm.
don't necessarily have the courage or even the know-how or even the understanding of what happened to them to put it
Yeah.
into words where it can create change. So
Mhm.
that's what my mission was, or is, with Her Hope. With Wounds They Don't Give Medals For, is to help others understand that our experience may be personal, and many of us have experienced gaps in the system, right? Which leads to Her Hope Foundation, is bridging those gaps in transitional services and resources and housing for unhoused female veterans without dependent children. Why?
Yeah.
Because that's part of my lived experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, if every woman veteran wrote a book
Right.
about even just a short cliff note about what they had experienced while they were in service, I am most positive would change the trajectory of the discussions that they have and kind of the policies, the instructions, the regulations that they have,
Mm-hmm.
um, on so many different levels, because people will start to learn
Right.
and not just take it from the male perspective,
Right.
here in the DMV. And y'all, for those that don't know what DMV is, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, there is a beating drum. I mean, it is constantly beating out here on women veterans need to be seen, heard,
Right.
respected, validated, all the things. And so they're trying their best to have different communities being raised. And there's so many founders here that are doing their part. And I know Atlanta is like a mega, it's like a hub, if you will, for, more communities to do their part too.
Right.
But I just want to say thank you. I really, really want to say, how proud I am of you. I am so proud of you and what you were able to do and how you're able now to help others. And and it's that helping and that service, right? Service
Right.
to our fellow, women veteran or anyone who feels like they resonate with you, for whatever reason that you can support, based on our lived experiences.
Right.
So, her Hope Foundation was founded in what year?
2023.
2023. And
Yes.
so the main focus there is to bring in women, who have similar, experiences like you. Tell us a little bit about that, so that way our audience, if they're in the area in Georgia, they can connect, they can, see you, maybe experience some things that you put on. So what exactly are you doing?
So that's a great question. So far well, let me back up a little bit. So Hope of Her Hope stands for Housing, Opportunity, Purpose, and Empowerment. Her Hope
Mm,
Foundation was created to help close the gaps in housing and support for women veterans, including mothers with dependent children. We want women to have more than information. They need safe housing, trusted connections, peer support, recovery resources, employment pathways, and people who see the whole woman. Um, so far to this day, we have already had the opportunity to help a woman veteran as far as when it comes to housing, help her and her family move toward greater stability, excuse me. Even at one point, I opened my home to allow a woman veteran to stay here who was in her own crisis and had nowhere to go. So I opened my own personal home because we don't have a facility. That's
yeah.
one of the goals that we're working towards, is to secure a facility so we can actually provide those transitional housing and resources to not only the woman, the female veteran, but also to her dependent children, get them connected to resources and support also, just to strengthen the foundation of the family altogether. Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
we will be we are planning for our next event. Last year, we did have our inaugural Veterans Day fundraising brunch. It was last November. This year, we are planning for a winter party in December. We're still looking for a location, as well as some other a vendor. I'm sorry, not a vendor. Excuse me, a venue, a DJ. We're trying to have a little bit of a different party.
Yeah.
Or different setting, excuse me, ugly sweater contest, things like that, as well as a gift drop off, so that we can then take those to there's a couple of shelters and there's a couple of housing centers that are here in Atlanta, none specific to women veterans with their dependent children, but there are women transitional houses here. So that's
Yeah.
our goal. This On July 25th, we'll be at Truist Park for their back to school event. So we'll have a vendor table there as well to get more information, to have some coloring pages, and then to write letters to women veterans is what our table is going to have, to say thank you to women veterans. And so really, we're trying to bring more awareness. We are out here, and giving each one of us a voice is ultimately the goal, not just only with wounds they give medals for, but also Her Hope Foundation is not only the voice, but also a safe space to land when they need it.
Yeah. Well, I do have a few people that come to mind that either have been on the show or have crossed paths with at some point. I will certainly tag them on the social medias that are attached to this live show, so that way they can see and reach out. And I'll do some other introductions too, because this is important work, and especially for those that are willing to do this type of work. This is not for everybody, y'all.
No,
Okay,
it's not.
so you got to have a special heart. And you got to have, the right level of understanding, all right, and being knowledgeable in this space, because this is personal. This is very personal. And so if you or anyone out there listening to the show, if you know anyone who's in this space, please reach out to Samantha, give her the names and the connections that she needs, so that way she can increase and expand her work, because this is absolutely incredible. So I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, as I knew we would do. I mean, because this is just what happens here on the Slay to Success Talk Show. But I do have two things. First of all, is there anything that we have not talked about that you want to share with the audience before we wrap it up for tonight?
I do have some for your listeners, just to put out there. My website is samanthanorment.com. That's where you can pre-order Wounds They Don't Give Medals For. Her Hope Foundation Inc.org is the website for the nonprofit. We are registered 501c3. If you can sponsor housing, I know this probably sounds like an ad, so please forgive me.
No. This is the perfect place to be, to say it. Go ahead, Queen.
So then let me go to the top of mine. So if you lead an organization, I want you to consider something. It is not enough to ask whether resources exist. We must ask whether the women who need them can safely find, trust, and access them. If you control funding, property, programs, policies, or platforms, you have the ability to help close those gaps. You do not have to share my experiences to become part of the solution. You can sponsor housing, you can provide property, you can purchase books for your employees, veterans, students, or community. If you recognize yourself anywhere in my story, I want you to know that what happened to you does not get the right to the rest of your life. Does not get to write the rest of your life. If you love someone who is struggling, I hope this book and just connecting with me, I hope this helps you look beyond what you can see and consider what they may be carrying. So I appreciate you, Ms. Hemingway, for having me on your show.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual. It's totally mutual, and we're now connected. So I mean,
I'm good with that.
Like,
I'm good with it.
Yeah, we're together now. So like any place that we could see each other in person. We're forever bonded now. But I do want to ask you one last question. I ask every guest that comes here on the show. It's about legacy. I mean, you're telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things that I am looking forward to is my 80th birthday party, where I just want to have a big, huge party, invite all my family and friends. But there are some things that I want them to say about me. I want them to know me for those things. And not necessarily, my hardships and all the things that go with that. I mean, yes, you can, but I really want to make some impact and make a positive impact and difference in the world. So if God gives you 80 years,
okay,
and you have a big party and you invite all your family and friends, what would you want them to say about you?
Wow, that's a good question. What would I want them to say about me? I would want them to say, first, I would want my daughters to know and to speak on and see that I did more than overcome adversity. I want women and families who regained stability, to carry on with that legacy, to take the opportunities that are provided, whether it's through her hope or ones they don't give medals for, to take that and thrive. I want my legacy to be turning invisible wounds into visible pathways of hope. I want to use my truth to help women feel less alone. That's, I think, one of the things, the biggest things for me is the view that not only my daughters have, but also the pathways that were created for other women veterans.
Yeah. Well, you're doing it, Queen, from what you're sharing with me. And, it's always good to meet other women who are doing things to really leave a mark in this world.
Yes.
And I appreciate you. And y'all, this is the top of the hour of the Slay to Success talk show. I want to thank Life with Lacey D for being with us tonight on the live show. And for those that come back and watch the replay, please put in your comments. Let us know what your takeaways were. Maybe even share a little bit about your experience from a woman veteran's perspective, and how you can either resonate or indifferent. We just want to hear from you. And also, we will be back here on the Slay to Success talk show, not this Sunday, because I'll be out, and y'all see where I'm going to be, because I'll put it out there on social media. So, but I won't be here next Sunday. I also won't be here for the Rise and Slay morning show on Tuesday mornings that I have at 10 a.m. Again, just look out for the post. I'll make sure everybody's informed. Okay. But we will be back the following week. And we'll have another SLAYMAZING guest for that night. And so thank you so much, y'all, for being here. Thank you, Samantha, for being such a SLAYMAZING guest here on this show. And y'all keep on slaying until you can't slay no more. And we will see you all very soon. Bye-bye.